Howdy folks, Andy Game Almost here, and we're back on Elite Dangerous again for the second part of Drew Wagar's Law Tour. So, as soon as Drew comes online, we'll be away. We stand in Ceti, and we'll be learning about the importance of this system and whatever else has gone on around it. So, it'll all be interesting. Okay, so Drew Wagar is now online. We're just waiting on him starting the stream. And once the stream starts, I'll shut up and leave it in Drew's capable hands, and I'll just fly around. I'm just getting out the station. Here we go.
Right, so it's working. So, why are we in Ceti? Okay, why are we here? The reason we're in Ceti is the first system to be colonized outside of Sol in the Elite Dangerous timeline, right? Okay, so we are here because of for that exact reason. That's where we start next. Okay, so this is the system map for Ceti, right? And you can see here we have a habitable world. Now this was the important thing. In last week's Law Talk, we discovered that humanity had discovered that there were habitable worlds outside of the solar system. So this was a big deal, right? Because it meant that there were places for us to go. And conditions in Sol, because of the Federation taking everything, and I did get got a little bit of grief on my not grief. It was good natured, right? On my YouTube comments about the fact I was being I wasn't quite putting over capitalism, right? Right, and because I was British, I wasn't talking about it correctly. So there was a bit of friendly banter about different interpretations of capitalism, right? Commander Sinclair, can I be added to the private group? I'll go and check the groups in just a moment. Once I get back out of here. So, but essentially the US took over everything, right? Everybody joined the US on Earth. That became the Federation. We dropped the United States of bit, and it was just the Federation. So the origins of the Federation are the United States of America, right? And that's what happened in the Elite Dangerous Law. And then capitalism takes over as the driving force in Sol. Lots and lots of corporations, and those corporations become extremely powerful, right? And they can drive progress. So yeah, so the Europe, Australia, everything, right? Is we lose. America takes over the world, and the entire solar system, in fact. So so there we go. Now the interesting thing here, right? So this is. Why can't I get that up? There we go. There it is. The summary, right? It's because it's being pushed off the screen, right? Everybody I know is here. This is excellent. So thank you very much for turning up. That's great. But the summary here, the first colony outside the solar system, right? So this is the second place in the universe that humanity starts to live. First colony outside the solar system where the first alien life was discovered. Okay, so this is a cool thing we'll get to as well. Unfortunately, the last remnants are now in zoo enclosures for tourists. So there's a bit of a story about why that happened. And crops cover most of the surface. So we get to Ceti, okay? We get to Ceti. And Ceti looks like this. It's a fairly small system, but there is an Earth-like world there, which is obviously the target for it, okay? So that's where we end up, right? Anyway, so Ceti, okay? So let's establish where we are in the time. So this is the year 2140. So we're in the early. We're still in the early bits of the 22nd.
Scan detected.
I'm going to have a power to shields here, just in case. In the early years of the 22nd century, okay, 2140 is when manned expeditions are sent to Ceti. That's when it starts, okay? And manned expeditions are sent to Ceti. They're sent out by the corporations, okay? So the powerful corporations within the solar system who are capable of building ships. Remember last week how we talked about the fact that corporations became so powerful they rivaled governments. Well, now they're, in the absence of any other governments other than the Federation, the corporations are effectively given free rein within a colored government. and they can build ships and they can go and do stuff. And there's a mass building of ships, generation ships, and all sorts of things going on to colonize another place. So yeah, it's crazy busy at this point in Earth's history, in the 22nd century. So the first colony ships are not sort of government ships; they are private vessels. Okay, they're going there for reasons of corporate priority. They're not going there under a government flag, i.e., they're not going as the Federation. And this is a really important point. Okay, they're not going as the Federation. They're going because we're the corporate and we want to take advantage of this. Okay, so that's why they're going. Okay, so they kind of, you know, it's a bit anarchic at this point, because a bit of instancing going on there as well. So you know, so it's a bit strange. So the corporations are sending these ships, okay, and it takes a little while to get there, not surprisingly, but the technology is improving all the time. Now we talked a little bit about how hyperspace had become possible last week, and you know, hyperspace is still difficult. It's bulky, it's complicated, it's not all that safe at this stage in the Elite Dangerous in the timeline. So hyperspace is complex, difficult, not very reliable. They've used it for unmanned stuff, but they haven't really used it for manned things at the moment, and you know, it's still in its infancy. Right, so they arrive and they start establishing the colony on Taylor's colony, hence the name Taylor's colony, right? In 2150. So halfway through the 22nd century, a colony is established on Ceti. So, and what we have here, as you can see, if we can look past the vast number of ships that are flooding my instance, that planet there is the first planet inhabited outside of the Earth in another star system. So it's quite a significant piece, right? We are now 12 light years away from the Earth, and we found another world, and we start populating it. But, okay, we also discover life on this planet, right? Okay, it is not sapient life in the sense that humanity is conscious of its own existence, but it's certainly sentient life, right? So you're talking higher order creatures, right? Creatures that can move around, can react to their environment, all sorts of stuff. Okay, there are other things that live on this planet as we start to populate. So that is a thing. Okay, so that's a major significant discovery. It has big implications because, of course, if there's life on this one, then maybe there's life throughout the universe, right? And we've, on the planet virtually next door to us, you know, 12 light years away, we have discovered complex life. Okay, so it's clearly not all that rare statistically across the galaxy, is the assumption that you can make from that. So that's, you know, pretty exciting. But this is a corporation going out here. They're not going out Star Trek style for, you know, to explore and bravely go where no one's gone before. They're going out there because they want to build something, right? They want to blue fairy felines, yeah. They want to build something. They want to exploit. They want to take over. They want to do things. Okay, so it starts getting interesting. Now, about the same time as this is back in Sol, overpopulation is becoming a problem, right? We've got space stations, we've got bases on the moon and bases on the other moons in the solar system. We've only got one habitable planet, and that planet is still in a mess, right? Still in a mess because of the Third World War that happened now about a century before. They're trying to tidy it up, but it's difficult, right? So they start to try and terraform Mars. Okay, they start trying to terraform Mars. So that's what's going on in the solar system around about now. And then corporations are expanding. Now we need to make a hyperspace jump somewhere else now, because Ceti was quickly followed up by a second place. Okay, so I need you to set your hyperspace destinations to Delta Pavonis. That's Delta. Type in the right box. Delta Pavonis. Okay. This was the other destination. This is 20 light years away. Okay, but you'll notice it's where's Sol? I've lost it already. That's the problem with galaxies. Too damn big, isn't it? Where is Sol? Can't see it on the map. Anyway, Delta Pavonis is where we're going. So set your hyperspace destination there. It's about 19. There's most of you should be good,
Friendship
right?
charge detected.
Okay, you should be able to do that in one jump, I hope. If you can't, get there as soon as you can and we'll rendezvous in the system. But that's the next destination. We've got to go to Delta Pavonis. So set your hyperspace for Delta Pavonis. Some people already lock you on target. Charge up your hyperspace drive and we will go for a trip. Oh, we've got to get out of the station range first, so do that. The Mars relic. No, we are coming to the Mars relic. We are coming to the Mars relic. So I think let me just check. I'll look it out.
Friendship drive.
No, we talked about we talked about the Mars relic last week. Quite right. I just remember going through my notes. So yes, we are. We did talk about the Mars relic last week. So there were some weird fossils found on Mars, which appear to be from another form of intelligence, right? Okay, so I'm going to just charge my friendship drive. Here we go. Hyperspace home. I do like seeing multiple hyperspace jumps. It's still cool. So we're leaving Ceti and heading for Delta Pavonis. There, which is fantastic. There we go. So onwards we go, right? Onwards we go. But no, we don't know a great deal about the Mars relic. Okay, it's small, and it is alien-ish. As far as we know, all we do know, or at least what we can surmise, is it isn't Guardian and it isn't Thargoid, because it doesn't seem to bear any resemblance to either of those cultures. Right, our destination is system map. Here we go. Let's go to. We'll rendezvous outside Schneider orbital, and that will be where we can rendezvous again. So I'm going to jump around a little bit because there's a few places to visit this month. Last tour we didn't have much in the way of jumping around because we hadn't gone anywhere, right? Whereas at this stage in the Lore tour, humanity has spread a little bit further, right? Which is good. Which means that we can actually travel somewhere, traveling much faster than they would have done, of course, in the day. But nevertheless, we can go there, right? So just get that into Super Cruise Assist. Lock on. Yes, there we go. Hands off, throttle and stick. That's quite nice. I'll let it do its thing. So anyway, Schneider orbital in the Delta Pavonis. Now the Delta Pavonis system is the next system to have been colonised, right? So the corporations were sending out ships to all the nearby systems that had been identified as having potentially habitable planets. And it just so turned out that in the Elite Lore, there are quite a lot of Earth-like worlds not very far from Sol, which is extremely handy if you happen to be wanting to expand, which is exactly what we did. Okay, we expanded, we got out there and we started colonising this world. Now we settled on Delta Pavonis as well. In fact, if I pop up the system map, you'll note here it's an Earth-like world suitable for water-based life, which is great. It's the stellar data. We'll come back to that, but lots of bits and pieces in there. So these Earth-like worlds are there. We're able to colonise them, and we start settling. We start breeding. We start taking over. Okay. Now, what happened at Delta Pavonis began to set the tone for this early colonisation, right? It wasn't well regulated. In fact, it wasn't regulated at all, really. The corporations went off and did their own thing. Oh, it's a conflict zone. How exciting. There we go. The corporations did their own thing. Right, here we go at Schneider Orbital. We'll hang out around the entrance for a bit. No need to go in. So again, if you're in my instance, then it'll be good to see you. Make sure you grab yourself some screenies and stuff while we're here. Always good. The classic Coriolis space station here. Always nice to see. So I'm just going to fly in and just park in front of the entrance. Not too close so I don't get loitering. Never a good thing, right? Be a few NPCs flying about. There we go, that'll do. Right, I'm going to slow down and turn about there. Look at that, like a boss-ish. Here we are at Delta Pavonis. Now the world here is
Delay Alpha November Delta. Landing permission will
this
be
one,
granted
okay?
upon request.
Reagan's legacy.
Welcome to this Federal Starport, Commander.
So that American culture kind of still strong, right? Assuming that's named after President Ronald Reagan, I assume it is. So you know that 20th century, 21st, 22nd century vibe still being a thing, right? So that's quite cool. But here we settle the world as well, okay? With our corporation hat on. Now the colonists here, and this is we haven't got to 2296 yet. This is still the 22nd century, so we're here at 2180 about now. And what happens is we settle Delta Pavonis. We discover here too that there is life, indigenous life on the planet. The tragedy is though that it goes extinct as a result of our arrival. Okay, we actually kill it off, not deliberately, as is quite often the case with humanity. We kill it off accidentally. Okay, bacteriological infection. So quite topical, really, right? Though it's not a virus. We actually bring pathogens to this planet. This planet can't cope, and the bacteriological infection wipes out the indigenous population of Delta Pavonis. Okay, we don't know whether those creatures were intelligent. We don't know what potential they had. All we know is that the arrival of the colonists basically wiped them out. Okay, and so we destroyed the ecosystem of Delta Pavonis, or at least a big part of the ecosystem of Delta Pavonis. Okay. So this is something that happened in 2180, and news of this is beginning to filter back to Sol. Okay, that the colonists are, exploiting the planets, and they are digging up the ground, and they are killing. Okay, they are destroying the native ecosystems. The same thing is also happening back on Tau Ceti. Okay, is that we are taking over vast tracts of land. We are digging up, destroying native plants, building things, and we are killing off the native populations. Okay, so we are doing kind of what we did on Earth again. Okay, and this is beginning to sound warning bells back to the government back in Seoul, the Federation itself, saying this is unacceptable. We shouldn't be doing this sort of stuff. And so this is beginning to happen. This is the tension that's building towards the end of the 22nd century. We are destroying ecosystems on other planets. Okay, the beautiful crate there, that crate, Cobra Mark III. I think is that a Lavecom paint job? I'm not sure what it is, but very nice anyway, very pretty. Right, so off we go. This is the next jump. Okay, so we need another hyperspace jump, guys. We need to go now to the third place that was colonized, which is Beta Hydri. Just checking my notes to see how we spell it. There we go. Should be Beta Hydri. There we go. This is the third place. Oh, it requires a permit. Oops. Oh, we can't go there then. I hadn't realised that. I thought I checked that. That's weird. Route unavailable. That's not so good. Okay. And Altair, I think, is permit locked as well. Yeah. Oh, that requires the Beta Hydri permit as well. Okay, that's interesting. Never mind. I can't go there. I thought I checked that. That's really weird. Anyway, it doesn't matter because the situation is. I assume you have to make friends with some people. So not to worry. That's fine. We'll hang around here because this is the story is basically the same. Okay, the story is basically the same. Right. Let's go to Altair. Well, don't worry. Let's not worry about because I'll have to wind drop and it will go. We'll. Just cause chaos. Let's go to Altair. Sorry about the Beta Hydra. That's worth getting a permit for. Go and investigate. We'll do another one. It doesn't really matter too much, okay? Because the story is the same. Right? We go to Tau Ceti and we start making a colony and we start exterminating the indigenous creatures. Right? We go to where do we just go?
Frame Drive charging.
Delta Pavonis, that's it. We went to Delta Pavonis. We start wiping out all the indigenous creatures. In fact, we quickly wipe out all the indigenous creatures. Okay. So here, less hospitable, right? An Earth-like world there. Interesting enough, we don't put a space station on it. But let's go to solar orbits. Let's rendezvous at Solo Orbiter. Let's go there. Engage space. Means I can talk, right? So we go to Tau Ceti, we go to Delta Pavonis, we go to Beta Hydra, and we go to Altair, and we start colonizing. And on every single planet, okay, we are causing mayhem. We are causing mayhem. We wipe out the creatures on Beta Hydra. Delta Pavonis. Beta Hydra, I'm not quite sure. Tau Ceti, as you saw in the description, right? We almost wipe out the indigenous life forms. In fact, the only ones that survive are a handful, and they're kept in special enclosures, right? Because we alter the atmosphere and we change things. And by the time of Elite Dangerous, 1,000 years later, those things are basically kept in captivity, right? They're bred in captivity, so you know that's all that's left of them. Their planet is subsumed by humans, and we are effectively spreading out of control. There is no governance, there is no control, there are no standards. The corporations go out there, take over the planet, and effectively become their own government. Okay, they've effectively become their own government, and this doesn't go unnoticed, okay? It doesn't go unnoticed by the authorities in Sol, the Federation as it stands at that point in time. So they're getting increasingly alarmed by this behaviour that's happened over the last few decades. But they're busy, okay? They are busy in Sol. The context for what's going on in Sol at this point, and we'll go and hang around again in front of the... ooh, that was a funny little glitch I saw there. Federation welcomes you, Commander. It gives me a shiver. There we go. We'll just park outside the space station again, as we normally do. I'm going to park a bit further away. Actually, it was a bit close last time. We couldn't get a good view of the ship. There we go. So that gives us plenty of screeny room. There we go. Right, I've got my throttle off. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so this doesn't go unnoticed, but the Federation at Sol has still got its own problems. Okay? The first terraforming attempt on Mars fails. Okay? We try and terraform Mars, it doesn't work. Right? It doesn't work. Something goes wrong. It's in the law. It's not specific about what goes wrong, but it just fails. Okay, it's not successful for whatever reason. It doesn't take. It's too complicated. We can't get enough oxygen or water, or whatever it happens to be. We've still got radiation coming down from the sky. It doesn't work. Okay, so the terraforming attempt on Mars is abandoned. All right, and that we have to go back to Earth, right? We can't get Mars to work, which isn't good. So that's a bit of an ecological disaster that happens in the solar system. At the same time, Earth is still not very habitable, right? It's still got a lot of problems because of World War III. So we start what is called in the law an Earth Environment Recovery Program. Right? We're trying to restore the atmosphere of Earth such that it's still not viable. Okay. This Earth is preoccupied by this, okay, and it takes a long time for anybody to have time to react to anything else other than that's going on in the solar system. But eventually, news of what is going on out in space on these four systems that we've got: Tau Ceti, Beta Hydra, Delta Pavonis, and Altair. News of what is going on out there filters back to Sol, and the problem being is that they're not happy about this, because they say this isn't how it's supposed to be going, guys. Because basically, you're going out there and you're making other stuff extinct. That's right. You're doing exactly what we did on Earth before, just on other planets, right? You are wiping out the ecologies and the ecosystems and the life forms that exist out there. And so the Federation, which is at Sol only at this point in time, sends an ultimatum. They check with Delta Pavonis. It's too late, right? They've already been wiped out. But on Tau Ceti, they come to understand that the oh, there's a lovely cobra in a dark. Is that a yeah, it's very nice. Very shiny. That looks like one of the iridescent paint jobs. Fantastic stuff. There you go. Have a bit of yeah, they come to understand that Tau Cetis, they are extinguishing life forms, but there's still some there, right? So the Federation at Sol sends an ultimatum to Tau Ceti's corporate overlords, saying cease and desist, basically. They say they will send a force from Earth, from Sol, to Tau Ceti if the extinctions continue. Okay, so that is the first interstellar threat force. Okay, threat of force. Sort of regime change, right? Okay, so so Sol is now threatening Tau Ceti with a force, an invasive force of spacecraft, if they continue to do the extinctions. So this is happening now at the turn of the 23rd century. So we're at the year 2200 right now, and in those first couple of decades, it's politically tense now, because Earth is basically beginning to enforce its will on these 4 other systems, which are obviously much smaller economically, but they're growing fast. And Sol's view on this is effectively, if we don't get these guys under control, then within a few short decades, economically they're going to be as powerful as we are, and they're trying to assert their control. Okay, and they have a concern for the fact that we're going out there exterminating life forms, right? So they're trying to do all of those things. They're trying to kind of exert their control, keep things in check, but it's the cat is kind of out of the bag, right? Now, how are they communicating it? That is a really good question. It is unclear. Okay, the issue of FTL in Elite Dangerous Law is a bit vague. However, the law, as I was given it as a writer back in 2014, indicated that FTL comms were possible, but they were extremely rare at the point of Elite Dangerous. Okay, so 3300. So I'm making an assumption here that FTL comms are not available at this period of Elite Dangerous. So we're talking at the 23rd century. This is probably radio transmission, okay? So it takes a few years to get there, a few years to get back. There are several decades in between events at this point, which would make sense, right? Because you get 10 years to send the message and 10 years to send the ultimatum back. So this is the sort of stuff that's going on, okay? But they do have hyperspace capable probes at this point in the law, so maybe they sent the message using a hyperspace probe. It's not clear, right? It's not clear. But so there's a bit of ambiguity about that in there. Now the Tau Cetians do receive this ultimatum from Sol. Okay, they do receive this message from Earth, and they do what many organisations do in receipt of such a message. They ignore it. Okay, they ignore it. They say, "Yeah, what do you got?" And so basically, Earth is put in the position of, okay, what do we do now? They've refused the ultimatum. So Tau Ceti tries to call Sol's bluff. Okay, they call their bluff and basically say, what are you going to do? Okay, what are you going? Are you really going to assemble a force of spacecraft and come and get us? So we have rebellion. Okay, Tau Ceti rebels against Sol's control and basically says, yeah, well, bring it then. So this is what's happening at the beginning of the 23rd century. Okay, Tau Ceti is basically gone, yeah, whatever, make me. At this point, the law is a little bit unclear, but there's some sort of rebellion on Tau Ceti. Okay, So, and we should really go back to Tau Ceti for this bit. Let's do that before we continue on. So back to Tau Ceti, everyone. Back to Tau Ceti. Let's do some jumping around. It's quite good fun. I like jumping around. There we go. Is that Tau Ceti down there? Yay. Right. So there's a few people still in Tau Ceti. What are you doing down there, guys? Let's go back to Tau Ceti. Oh, I didn't plot a route.
Scan detected.
There we go. Back to Tau Ceti, everybody. So we're jumping around these early systems, right, in the Federation. So everyone head for Tau Ceti. So 20 light years away. Off we go to Tau Ceti.
Friendship charge detected.
All of you with your jump engineered ships that are outrunning my little Cobra. Make up my mind, hey, we're touring, right? We're touring. Right? We can go round and round and round and round. That's the whole point. Make up my mind, yeah, I know. There we go. Off to Tau Ceti. Hyperspace jumps. That's very cool. Look at all those ships flying around. Boom, off we go. We are going back to Tau Ceti because this is where things start getting a little bit fraught and a little bit interesting. Now, there's some sort of rebellion in the administration of Tau Ceti, and the way it reads is that, and we'll go back to Taylor. Let's go to Taylor Colony. Alien transgressions. There's a few bits and pieces in here. Look, so ecological loss, federal accord. There's tourist beacons in here that are worth reading. I'm not going to go through them. You can do that in your own good time. Okay, I'm giving you the background. You can go and do your own. You can look at all the exhibits on the tour yourself. I don't want to kind of spend all the time reading those out, right? So get back to Gilmore Orbiter. I'm heading in exactly the wrong direction. That's good. Head back to Gilmore Orbiter. Yeah, let's get that lined up. And we'll rendezvous there. But something happens, right? Something happens in the administration of Tau Ceti. There's some sort of rebellion. Okay, so I'm assuming that somebody in the government of Tau Ceti or a faction there basically said, no, we should do what Earth says. Okay, and there's another faction basically saying, no, sod them. We're Tau Ceti. We call the shots, right? We're independent, and the second lot win. Okay, so Tau Ceti puts down this rebellion. Or actually, maybe the rebellion is successful. It's not clear which way around it works, right? Thank you for the follow, by the way. That's great. Basically, whoever the guys who are saying independence, we're on our own and we want to control our destiny, they win. Okay, and this is when Taylor's colony, the planet, gets its name. So Taylor, I assume, is some guy in the law who was the leader of this rebellion, and basically saying sticking two fingers up to the sole government. So that is where Taylor's colony gets its name from, back at the beginning of the 23rd century. Okay, so that sort of sets the scene for the next thing. So Earth is threatened. Tau Ceti is basically basically saying, yeah, bring it, kind of. The scene is set for this thing. Now, somebody asked Commander Olander, do we know what kind of spacecraft existed back then? And I assume this was before the Cobra and the Viper. Yeah, so this is way before any ships that we recognise in the Elite Lore, okay? Even the Cobra and the Viper, although they're old designs, and some of the ships, which is the oldest ship in the lore? Oh, I should know that. The oldest recognisable ship in the lore. I've got a feeling it's not the Cobra, actually. I think it's... Oh, I'm going to have to look that up. Yeah, I should know. Why didn't I know that? Let me just go and look it up. The first recognisable ship we know about, okay, is... well, the Gecko, and before that, which isn't actually in there. And then the Cobra Mark 1 exists, but that's not for a long, long time. Okay? So we don't get there anytime soon. For the ships that you would you begin to recognise. Okay. Oh no, even the Python and the transporter and things are much earlier than that. So we will learn about those in due course. Oops, screen context. There we go, back to Gilmore Orbiter. There we go. Right, just do that back up there. So we're now. That's it. The transporter was really early. You're quite right. The transporter is the first recognisable. Not that we have the transporter in Elite Dangerous, unfortunately, but it is. It is in some of the earlier games, and we'll pop over and have a look at those at some point. We don't need it for tonight's lore tour, but we will pop out in that sort of thing. So, what basically happens is at sublight speeds, okay, sublight speeds, non-FTL travel, as far as I can work out in the lore, that Earth basically is forced to enforce its ultimatum. Okay, so the Sol government says basically, you know, the Tau Cetians are not heeding our threat. All of the other colonies are now sort of looking on, saying, okay, so what is the Earth going to do? What's Sol going to do, right? And they decide to send a force. Okay, so they send a war fleet, the first ever war fleet, you know, space armada. Okay, primitive ships armed with primitive weapons. We don't exactly know what. But primitive ships, they send them, okay? They send them to Tau Ceti to basically teach them a lesson, okay? So imagine here you've got to send a war fleet, okay? You can't just hyperspace in like we can today and attack, okay? You've got to get there, so you've got to, you build these things, you know, and they're going to be spies and all sorts of things going on. So the Tau Cetians know this fleet is coming, right? It takes them a long time to get to Tau Ceti, right? So they know this fleet is coming, even with the fusion drives and all the sorts of fast acceleration stuff that they do have. It's still real space, okay? It takes them a long time to get to Tau Ceti to enforce this. So not only has the Space Armada got to make that trip with supplies and provisions and backup and everything, it's a massive logistical undertaking to attack another solar system at this point in time, which is what Sol decides to do. Everybody else is going to watch this going, whoa, what's going down here? Okay, what's going to happen here? Sol, and they've taken this seriously, right? They decide to enforce their directive. Okay, they decide to, it's a Space Force, right? Space Force. They decide to enforce their directive, and they send a fleet of warships to Tau Ceti to basically bring the colony under control. Now Tau Ceti knows this is coming, okay? Tau Ceti knows this is coming. So the corporation there decides to put up a fight, okay? Decides to put up a fight. So they build a fleet too. And they've got plenty of time, okay? Because they know where the Sol fleet is, because they can check it out. And they have time to build up a response, okay? And ultimately, in the year 2241 is the first interstellar battle, okay? The first proper war outside of the solar system between Tau Ceti and Sol, and they attack. Okay, they arrive in the Tau Ceti system and they try it. They engage, right? The outcome of that war is a stalemate. The outcome of the war is a stalemate. Sol does not win, and we should reenact. That's not a bad idea, actually. We can have a who's for Tau Ceti. We have a war in space, right? Okay, and Sol does not win, but Tau Ceti doesn't win either. Okay, it is a stalemate, and it's fought over the planet. In the Tau Ceti star system, and Earth is forced to a standstill, cannot enforce its will, but Tau Ceti can't win either. It can't fend off the forces. There we go. So Commander Thatcher is absolutely right. So we need some Tau Ceti. So these are this is the first interstellar war. Okay, and the result is stalemate. Okay, neither side wins. Okay, neither side wins. Now, economically, both the colony and Sol are adversely affected by this attack, right? Dear Tau Ceti, we are going to attack you in a few years' time. So it's not tactically a very good position, right? So it's a rather futile war, but you can imagine how the politics got kind of sucked into it. But basically, Tau Ceti is the richest colony. It's the first colony, so it's the most powerful, and they couldn't be pushed under a jackboot by Sol, right? And the economic damage to Tau Ceti and the economic damage to Sol is significant, right? You don't wage a war without cost. It's extremely costly to have it done. And so negotiations are opened between Tau Ceti and Sol, and ultimately all the other three colonists, so Beta Hydri, Altair, and Delta Pavonis, basically say, look, okay, we will give you, this is Sol, we will give you independence, the ability to run your own affairs as a star system, if, and this is the big if you will enter into, there's effectively, an organizational bond with the Sol system, okay? So what that basically is the formation of the Federation as we understand it in Elite Dangerous. The five founding worlds, the five founding worlds of the Federation at this point, agreed by treaty, are Sol, Delta Pavonis, Beta Hydri, Altair, and of course Tau Ceti. And that is really the origin of the Federation as it is understood today. So that is what is built upon to become the Federation as we see it in Elite Dangerous. By the 34th century, of course, it's dozens and dozens and dozens of words. Yeah, the five founding words. Sorry about that. But there are five, and that is the core of the Federation. Those four colonies and Sol become the founding worlds of the Federation itself. Now the Federation is now not just Sol, so Sol becomes Sol again rather than the Federation, and the Federation is now that group of 5 star systems. And that is all done and dusted in the year after the war, okay, so they try not to have wars again. And that's how they all kind of come together. So did any of the colonies have different name for themselves other than the system name, since we learned last week that the Federation was Sol at the time? So no, so at this point they keep their names, their name objects within the systems as they want to, but they are members of the Federation as opposed to the Federation, which is what it was before. So Sol is still Sol, but Sol isn't the Federation anymore. It's a member of the Federation. So the Federation is now a multiple set of star systems, and it starts to become more and more. So that's the base from which we expand. The corporations continue doing their thing, but we now have a government structure, if you like, which spans multiple star systems, and that is the beginning of the Federation. Now, the 23rd century continues to move on, okay, and Sol is able now, with the threat of war averted, which is good, right? Sol is able to concentrate continually on improvements to Earth, trying to get the atmosphere there under control, and they go back and try and terraform Mars a second time, okay? And it's a bit more successful this time. So let's go back to Mars, and we're going to have a look at that. So let's head to the Sol system for the next little chapter of that sort of stuff. So we have a Federation, right? We have a Federation, and now we need to head back and go back to the seat of the Federation and see what's going on over there. So head back to Sol. So this is where it all starts, of course. We all know this system. Hopefully all of you have got your permits for this one. Sorry about the Beta Hydri one there. I must have missed the click on that one. So we'll head back to Sol and go to Mars, because that's where the next stuff happens. 'Cause the chances of anything goes. Does he have the? I do have the permit for Mars. Yes, yeah, I do have the permit for Sol. I hadn't realised. I must have misclicked on something. I thought I'd checked all the rules quite carefully to make sure that I had the right permits. But let's head back to Mars. So off we go. Get your ass to Mars. Yes. So we're now coming to the end of the 23rd century. Okay, we're getting to the end of the 23rd century, and let's go to Mars. What's the Mars High, of course. There we go. There's the space station there. Now at this point, there becomes in the law there becomes a slow separation here between the government of a system and the government of the Federation at a high level. The Federation becomes this sort of slightly higher level body, okay, from a kind of governmental perspective, which is why you start to see individual societies building themselves within the star system. So you'll notice in the galaxy map here that if we look at where's the data? A lot of people in the system. That's awesome. So where's the data I want? Oh, it's on the screen. Right, go to the system data. Right, so here, for example, you notice we started off with a federal government, right? But what happens is that within that structure, okay, the overarching thing is federal, but, as you can see, the allegiance remains with the Federation, right? But these other factions start to exist within the system, and they're kind of allowed because each area is allowed to kind of conduct its own affairs, with the Federation being the overarching control of all the star systems, which is why you start getting, different types of structure. You notice, you can hear there's a whole bunch of democracies appear, and some of them are, various different types. And there's a cooperative type of thing. So other structures of local government start to exist within the construct of the Federation as a whole, and that's a change in the way that the government is structured. Now, what this is good is it began to bring a certain level of peace to the affairs of of humanity, right? So nobody really wanted another war. Okay, we were slowly learning our lessons. We were slowly learning our lessons about the fact that so it appeared, right? We were slowly learning our lessons that combat and destruction was not necessarily the best way forward for a peaceful society. And so, everyone basically said every time we go and fight, right, things go wrong and it costs us lots of money. That's not a great way of doing business. So there is this attempt to maintain peace and have a sort of light touch government with a federation over the top, and allowing each of the different member states to actually do their own thing to a degree. But there's an understanding, right? The Federation has a constitution which all of the planets agree to sign up to. There is some work done in Ceti to preserve the remaining indigenous life, and as you can see, even in the time of Elite Dangerous, if I just show you that, if we select Ceti, it's one of the features on the chart even today is that it's the first colony where the first alien life was discovered. Unfortunately, the last remnants are now in zoo enclosures for tourists, but at least we saved them, right? They didn't go completely extinct. Okay. So they managed, at the end of that war, one of the things that benefited from the war was the indigenous life that wasn't made extinct, although its habitat was destroyed. So that's become a problem, okay, which was then resolved by the fact that the Federation came into existence. Okay. Now, this federal influence was spreading. Okay, federal influence is spreading around this area. Okay, so worlds in this area, it will like Epsilon Indi, Van Man Star, which is again an interesting one. Okay, again you need a permit for that one, and various other places like EZ Aquarius and some of those systems around here, these are, and Cap 10 Star, all of these systems not too far away from Sol are now being colonized. Humanity is spreading fast, but it's spreading under a federal banner, okay? The Federation is the overarching government. And if you want to be a member of the Federation, you don't really have a choice, okay? If you're going out there as a corporation, you have to be under the auspice of the Federation. That requires you to do certain things to have federal support, and otherwise the Federation will come down on you pretty hard. You know, they prove that it can be done, and it's kind of a little bit like an alliance of sorts. You know, attack on one member is an attack on all members. So you know, you kind of have to toe the line. So it's a little bit overbearing, kind of from a governance perspective. So that's, you know, that's how that sort of stuff is working, and that's a little bit oppressive. Okay, it's a little bit oppressive. So the colonies, you know, expanding in that kind of space around the solar system and out into the darkness, into the galaxy. Meanwhile, back on Earth, okay, the second attempt to terraform Mars is successful. Now, they are able to get it to work this time. Whether it was technological or whatever went wrong the previous time, this time it's okay. This time it works, and it's good. Okay, so we have Mars. We are able to set foot on Mars, and in the year, let me just check it. In the year 2290, somewhere around about right at the end of the 23rd century. Okay, so it's sort of Star Trek.
Yeah, the stream's buffering. That's
right
back.
at the end of that era, humans are able to stand on the surface of Mars without spacesuits. Okay, we have successfully terraformed Mars, and we're able to stand outside and explore the surface of Mars. Right? Okay. This is Mars High space station we're at the moment. For those of you who are not quite sure where we are, Mars High, which is in orbit around Mars, surprisingly enough, in a high orbit, I would imagine. So that's what that looks like. So yeah, so we are able to stand on the surface of Mars, right? Now this is quite interesting because I don't know, it doesn't say in the law how Mars was terraformed, okay, it just says it was. And so we don't really know how that was achieved, because it was, you know, terraforming a planet is a big deal, right? So Mars has not very much gravity, so that's a problem. It's about 0.3 of the Earth, right? So that's a problem. Doesn't have any atmosphere at all in today, and doesn't have a magnetic field. You know, all sorts of other problems. There's no pressure on Mars, so you know, liquid water can't exist. So you've got a whole host of problems to deal with in terms of terraforming, right? Now, yeah, the previous attempt failed, so they started. When did they start? Let me just go back. So they started trying it in 2170, and it failed. And they completed it 100 years later in 2270. They started again, and they were able to finish that in 20 years according to the law. Now that to me seems a bit unlikely. So there are flaws in Elite Dangerous Law. I mean, terraforming an entire planet in 20 years. I mean, maybe some weird technology has been invented, right? Maybe there's just a big lever, like in Total Recall. I was just thinking that big lever you push and whoosh, lots of atmosphere comes out. But whatever, you've obviously got some quite clever technology at this point, right? So we managed to terraform Mars in 20 years, which is kind of like a bit sort of head scratching. How do we manage that? But you know, we did. Okay, it's in the law, so it must be true, right? It's in the law. So we are able to stand on the surface of Mars. By the end of the 23rd century, we're able to stand on the surface of Mars, and we don't need spacesuits anymore. We have another planet, and I think if you look at Mars, there's an enormous spaceship in front of me. Where's Mars? Can anybody see Mars? There's too many ships. Where is Mars? Must be out there somewhere. Does me know which where is it? There's the sun. There's Ceti. We've been there. There's Mars. We'll go and have a look at it. Hang on, I'm going to look at this. I should be able to see Mars, right? But let's go down near the surface of Mars. Now this probably won't work too well unless you're in a wing or something. But we'll come back Mars is terraformed, right? Let's go there. We'll drop into we'll just go for a tour of Mars, just quickly, see what it looks like, because if we go onto the daylight side, you'll notice that Mars is, so we'll head down towards the surface. It's behind the station. Okay, well, I've just found it now. There we go. Thank you very much, Demetrius. That's great. I can see it, which is quite funny. Right, so head down to low Mars orbit. We've been in Mars high. Let's go to Mars low, right? Let's go and see what the surface of Mars. Let's go and admire. Let's go and have a look at some of the scenery. Frame shift dropped, didn't I? Looks like I've got a wing signal there. That's good. I can home in on that. Wing beacon. I don't want to go too fast. Throttle back. Got in there a bit fast. Right, there we go. Slow down. So you can see some of. That's quite a nice spot there. I'm just going to dive into orbit here. I think, is that Olympus Mons? Yeah, look, so you can sort of see some of the volcanoes. So I'll drop here. And I'll put my wing beacon on so my wing can drop in, and hopefully that will give other people a chance to drop in to that space as well. So, but hopefully that's the wing beacon on, so we get a nice view of the surface of Mars, right? So Mars has become this nice place, right? Mars has become this nice place. Mars is now full of water. How the hell we got the water there? I don't know. I can only assume we crashed some comets into Mars or something. There's an awful lot of water that has arrived on Mars in not very long a time, right? So there we go. That's Mars. The major geological activity, shape of the planet is the same, but there is now an ocean, right? And so Mars is no longer the red planet; it's this lovely blue planet. In fact, Mars becomes a nicer place than Earth, right? Mars becomes a nicer place than Earth. Mars ultimately becomes the kind of central government location for the solar system rather than Earth. Earth becomes a bit more of a historical planet, and Mars actually is where a lot of the administration occurred. So Mars is kind of the nice downtown bit of Earth. So you go to Mars to retire. It becomes the place where the posh people live, right? So Mars is nice, whereas Earth is a bit kind of, well, it's a bit, that's sort of not such a nice part of the So Mars becomes the des res, right, rather than the Earth. And you can see some of the features. So I don't know my Martian geography very well. I have to say, I should know it a bit better. I was hoping I could see Olympus Mons and things like that, which should still be kind of poking up through the atmosphere. But you can see Mars is a nice place, right? It has, it's gone green, and it's still got its craters and so on and so forth. But it is a terraformed world. It's the first one. And Earth is sort of a bit spoiled, whereas Mars is fresh and new. Okay, so this is where people with money come to. Okay, a friend of mine has got He's got Olympus Mons. Excellent. Well, that's good news. I don't know which part of the planet is on.
Frameshift drive charging.
Let's see if I can see this hard to kind of hook up.
Ready to
See if we can see it. But, it's worth having a look, right? Because some of the features of Mars are still there,
Engage.
which is quite cool, right? So if you know what Mars is like. Yeah. Earth is so last century, right? That's exactly it. So Mars becomes a cool place to live, right? And so it becomes a big deal. It becomes a big deal if you live on Mars. You've arrived, right? If you live on Earth, not quite so impressive. This is the turn of the 24th century. Okay, so Sol has consolidated itself. Earth is under repair. Mars is now being terraformed. Colonies are starting to appear. The 4 main colonies have long been around now for almost a century, and other places are being colonized as well. Whatever it was that they did to Mars, right, terraforming it in 20 years, humanity is able to do elsewhere. Okay, so even if the star system you've discovered doesn't have an Earth-like world in it, but it does have a place that's terraformable, so barren planets or planets with thin atmospheres and Mars-like worlds in other systems, right? They become targets as well, because we have this terraforming tech, right? We have this terraforming tech which allows us to terraform inhospitable planets. So that becomes a big deal as well. That becomes a big deal. And the Federation continues to grow. The Federation continues to grow. And the federal structure that sits over all of this continues to mutate. It's still very forceful. It's still laying down the law. It's still very, I hesitate to use it. It's very United Statesy. Okay, it's quite freewheeling. It's quite free enterprise. It's quite, there's a lot of freedoms on one aspect. Okay, a lot of freedoms, to mark your own trail. But it's still very structured in that sort of way. And there are people who don't like this. Okay, there are people who don't like this. There are people who are looking at this saying, if we could get beyond the influence of the Federation, maybe we could set up a different society. Right? Maybe we could set up a different society. And there are people trying to, thinking along these sort of lines, right? People thinking along these sort of lines. And that becomes an important detail. So he's found. Demetrius says found Olympus Mons. I think a bit further around. Right. Let me see if I quite fancy seeing that. So do excuse me. I'm going to go and see if I can find Demetrius. I've got a wingman navlog on him according to that. So let's see if I can go and find him. So if you are able to follow it, he's hoping it is now because he's going to be live on the stream. So where is he? Right. So I've got him on the far side of the planet. So I'm going to have to. The moon with the rebel base. No, there we go. So we can see there's a polarized cap there. That's nice. So where's the wingman navlock? Let's just turn around. Okay, that's no. There we are. Wing signal. Right. Okay. So on the far side of the planet. All the beacon should be on, but kept dropping. Okay, there. I got you on my scanner, so let's just sort of see if we can get there. So is this Olympus Mons over here? Olympus Mons, for those of you who don't know what it is, right, is the biggest volcano in the solar system. It's extinct, but the reason it's the biggest one, it's about the same size as France, I think. So it's that's pretty massive, right? Whoa, okay. That just dropped.
Frameshift drive charging.
Well, there we go. Actually, no, we can look. There we go. We can see it. There we go. That. There are 3 other volcanoes there. That's right. That is correct. So that is Olympus Mons. So Olympus Mons in. That's pretty cool, actually. So I know that David Ravenfield is a massive fan. I'm just going to see if I can park above it. So Olympus Mons is this, huge volcano on Mars, right? So it's a little bit glitchy. It's dropping me in and out. Let me turn off the wing lock. That's a bit. Try again. So is the federal government located on Olympus Mons? I don't think it's actually on Olympus Mons. It's certainly on Mars. There we go. That's quite cool. Right, so there we go. Yes, Olympus Mons is this big one here, right? So I'm just going to crash in down towards it. See how close we can get. Okay. So this is that's quite scary. So there we go. That is Olympus Mons, right? There are some other volcanoes. They're probably over the horizon now. It's sort of in that direction. I can't remember. Some of the astronomers on the stream will know. But that is Olympus Mons. That is a volcano the same size as France, basically. So that's how big that is. The caldera at the top is, massive. It's hundreds of miles across. It's an enormous thing, and it actually on Mars today it pokes outside of the atmosphere. So that's how tall it is. And the reason that such a volcano is extinct now, right? Because Mars has lost all its volcanic activity probably years ago. It looks like a huge city. I suppose it does, really. Space it. But the reason it got so big is because Mars, we don't think, had plate tectonics like the Earth. So whereas on Earth, plates tend to move around, so a volcanic hotspot doesn't exist in the same plate relative to the surface of the Earth. On Mars, that stuff didn't move. So if you had a volcano that went off, it would tend to keep going off in the same place. So you get this massive volcano, after several million years of it erupting. And it's I think 3 times as tall as Mount Everest from the ground, and it's so big that because of the curvature of the surface of Mars, you can't see the top from the bottom. It's over the horizon. That's how big it is. So actually, from ground level, it's not all that spectacular. It only looks good from space, because it's actually a gentle slope out for most of its rise. You can't actually see it because it's such a big feature. Curvature of the planet is more important than the slope of the actual volcano, which sounds a bit weird, but it's so big, it's unspectacular from the ground, which is weird, quite hard to imagine. But interesting enough, in this time you can see that there's plenty of civilization there around the base of Olympus Mons. So it's obviously quite a cool place to live, right? So you can see lots of city lights and stuff in the shadow of the volcano. So Mars has become a cool place to live, right? Mars has become a cool place to live. No, so the law doesn't really specify how they terraform Mars. This lovely question. I would love to know what the answer to that is, but there's nothing there, right? The only little throwaway line it gives is that other places were colonized in the same sort of fashion. So whatever the colonization tech was, it was very effective and it worked quickly, right? You could colonize, terraform somewhere in a matter of decades, right? Having with the raw materials. How the hell you do that, I have no idea, because you've got to add a lot of water, right? And a lot of atmosphere from somewhere. Where do those raw materials come from? Is it some sort of processor on the ground which chucks stuff up into the atmosphere, or do you drop comets from space, or is it the Genesis torpedo from Star Trek? Who knows, right? Whatever it is, it's pretty advanced tech. It's not something that's explained, unfortunately. Which of course would be a fantastic weapon, right? Which is what Khan did in Star Trek, wasn't it? It was very much a case of, I'll terraform your planet back to something else. So we don't really know how it works. Okay, we don't really know how it works, but that's something that's something definitely that became possible. So yeah, it was hand waving me, so something like that. So you see this is the thing. The law of Elite Dangerous does have some oddities in it, right? So there's some places where it's really compressed, and you go like, that all happened in like 3 years, and in other places there's big gaps, as we'll see. So who knows how they did it? Maybe nukes to heat the core back up and get the magnetic field. Because you've still got that problem, right? If you put an atmosphere on Mars right now, it will evaporate away into space again, because you haven't got enough gravity. You've got the electromagnetic field, and all that sorts of stuff. So there's all sorts of problems. I don't know how that's solved. that is a problem. But we get Mars. Mars becomes a beautiful place to live, right? But the Federation is still seen as quite overbearing. Okay, most places, where they're settled, they're not all that far away from Sol, and so Sol's influence, the overall Federation structure, is very overbearing from that perspective. You're in the Federation, okay, and those are the rules. Now there are some people who don't like this, okay, and some corporations effectively set sail, going, right, we are going to travel off into the galaxy, far enough away from the Federation that we will be outside of their influence. We want to go so far away that the Federation can't influence us, can't affect us, can't rule our lives the way they do everybody else. So there are people who rebel effectively against, you know, the overall Federation control. And this sets up, and we'll get into it next week, right? This sets up the kind of overall kind of next stage of the development of the Law of Elite Dangerous, because one particular group sets off with the idea of creating a very different structure to the Federation. And we all know what happens to them, and we'll go into the detail next stream. But at this point in elite history, at the end of the 23rd century, okay, the end of the 23rd century, travel through space is sufficiently normalized that, you know, you don't need incredibly huge resources to do it, you know, spacecraft are capable of traveling between worlds, not quickly like they do in Elite Dangerous, but, you know, not impossibly difficult. And one particular such expedition heads off to a place that you may have heard of. We'll look at it on the galaxy map just to give you a sense of distance. So here we can see this is the Federation sort of exists in this period of space, this part of space here, right? This is the Federation. The world's within about 20 to 40 light years of Sol. Some ships really decide to go a long way beyond that, and one such place that they visit is a system called Achenar, which is considerably further away. Okay, Achenar, as you can see here. Oops, I just clicked on the Beagle point. That's a bit too far. Achenar is, as you can see when we finally get up, is 139 light years away. Now, in Elite Dangerous, that is nothing, right, anymore. Okay, but if we zoom out, we can see the relative scale. Okay, we can see the core worlds there of the Federation as it exists at this point in history. Okay, and we can see how far away Achenar is. Achenar is about 4 or 5 times as far away as the furthest colony ever settled at this period in time. And so some intrepid explorers basically say, we want to found another society, you know, outside of federal influence, somewhere else in the galaxy, right? And they think we've got to go as far as we possibly can with the technology of this time. And trying to go this distance back then was pretty ambitious, right? Pretty ambitious. And so some people set off thinking, if we go over here, the feds will never bother us, right? The feds will never bother us if we go from there. You know, over 100 light years, a serious piece of travel, okay? We want to get way outside federal influence. Now, you've got to bear in mind that doesn't seem like much today, right? But that was a massive undertaking for the technology at the time. Okay, so there's nothing in the year 3400, right? Nothing at all. But in 2300, this is a big deal. Okay, this is a big deal. So they're basically going off into unexplored space and setting up colonies. And there were others going out to do similar things, but this is a particularly famous one, as we'll discover to get there. So, it is one of many colonists that are set up. Now they kind of go out, all of these corporation ships, with a view that, yeah, of course, we'll join the Federation. We'll be part of the Federation. You know, we'll go out there, we'll settle the system, we'll join with the Federation once we get established, and the federal influence will continue to expand throughout the galaxy. Only this one doesn't. Achenar refuses to join the Federation. Okay, and that, of course, is another story, which we will discuss next week. But it's the first one. It's the first colony that actively, ever since the Tau Ceti thing, it's the first colony that basically says, no, we're not going to be a member of the Federation. We are not going to be a member of the Federation. They basically say no, we're not, and the Federation is left with the same dilemma as it had before, right? What do we do about this? And we'll talk about that next week, because as you know, nowadays, Achenar is the core of the Empire, which I actually find is actually perhaps one of the most exciting parts of the Elite Dangerous Law, because it's very, very different. Okay, very, very different to what we have in the Federation. So at this point, the seeds of what will become the Empire are sown. The end of the 22nd, at the end of the 23rd century, one of the colonies basically says, no, we are not going to be part of the Federation, and a whole bunch of events start from that point. So this is where the story of the Empire begins. Okay. And that is all sorts of mystery and weird and wacky intrigue, which we will get into. That's a fascinating story. And bask, yes, we will definitely do some basking. And it's quite interesting, actually. The Empire, and a little tidbit that I'll go into again next week. But when I deliberately wrote my book, Elite Reclamation, about the Empire, because I thought the Empire sounded much more cool than the Federation. And I was particularly interested because, for those of you who were watching my my stream there, the Federation is kind of the United States on steroids in space, right? Okay, so that's kind of how the Federation works. Whereas the Empire, when I asked David Brin, what's the Empire like? Okay, give me some background on the Empire. And the information I got on the Empire was that the Empire in Elite Dangerous time is sort of a bit of a cross between the Roman Republic as it existed at the beginning of the Roman period and the height of the British Empire. So huzzah, right? So you kind of have, if the Federation is America in space, then the Empire is sort of Britain in space. And that's sort of the flavour that you kind of get out of these things. So you've kind of got these two extremes of things. So if you can imagine the British Empire in space, so lots of tea, right? Lots of tea. That's kind of what the Empire. But we'll get to the Empire next week, okay? Because that's a huge story all of itself. So a few questions in the chat. So what about the ships we're using now? It's not clear. This is the ambiguous part, because there's the whole business about the generation ships that went out, okay, early on from the year 2097, and the impression you get from the Elite Law is that the generation ships didn't go out for very long, okay, because they were superseded by more superior technology in the form of early hyperspace tech, right? But it's not clear when it kicks in. The Elite Law is very vague about when hyperspace became sort of commercially viable, and when it and when it wasn't, and when does generation ship tech get superseded by some sort of more conventional drive system? It's vague, right? All we really know is that the first generation ship went off in 2097. There were supposedly 70,000 of these things sent off. Some of them were sent off with the intention of colonizing planets, which obviously was successful in some part. Many of them were sent off and it didn't work very well, and we know now in Elite Dangerous, and we'll go and visit some as part of this tour, that they had weird stories, right? Lots of things went wrong and most of them weren't successful. And there are also various generations of hyperspace technology, and we'll try and investigate some of those as well. So all sorts of things that are a bit confusing there. We don't know. I mean, hyperspace was invented really early on in the Elite Law, really early on in the 22nd century, and yet it doesn't seem to have been used very much. Okay, and when we get to the Empire, we'll find out a little bit about stuff that happens there, and that piece of information indicates that hyperspace wasn't in general usage around about this time. So it's not entirely clear exactly what drive technologies are being used at this point in time. It's confusing, right? Hyperspace is evolving. Generation ships are still in use. Some ships can move around. It's not entirely clear. So some of that history, I mean, I suppose if we take it from a lore perspective, maybe we say history doesn't recall, right? So we're not entirely sure. But certainly generation ships were using non-FTL travel, right? But limited forms of hyperspace travel were available because we were sending hyperspace probes to nearby systems. So whether or not hyperspace was deemed too risky for manned spaceflight for a long time, and then slowly we managed to get the hang of it. Maybe it did weird things to you. Okay, if you went through hyperspace early on, you kind of came out all messed up or something, like a dodgy transporter. Who knows? It's not clear, but certainly hyperspace adoption was very, very slow. It was either really expensive, or it was really complicated, or it went wrong a lot, or it was bulky and energy inefficient. We're not sure exactly why it didn't work, but it was definitely problematic. So I'm not sure about the FTL on generation ships. Normally with FTL, you shouldn't need a generation ship, right? Because you get there fast enough that it doesn't need to be a generation ship in the first place. And even if you're on a generation ship, if you do the maths, right? And I'm just going to head back to Mars High so we can kind of hang out again together, because you won't be able to get into an instance here down in Mars orbit. So let's go back up to Mars High, which I can never find. Let's go back up here. Actually, well, hang on. Tell you what, let's go somewhere else. Where haven't we been? Let's go in Titan City. We haven't been there. Let's go to Titan City around the Sol, just so that we've got a destination to go to, right? Let's go and see the sights of the solar system. Go there first. Right, so let's go to Titan City around Saturn. We'll just have a... Now, if you do the maths on the generation ship, and you take into account things like general relativity, right? If you accelerate to an appreciable fraction of the speed of light, you don't need to worry about a generation ship again, because time aboard the ship will effectively compress, so your journey time won't be too bad, right? Time outside, back on Earth, is a different matter, but time aboard the ship will be compressed if you can accelerate to an appreciable fraction of the speed of light. Now, whether a generation ship could do that, we're not entirely clear, but I don't think it makes a lot of sense for a generation ship to have faster than light travel, because you'll get there too quick to warrant building such a massive ship that can survive for generations, right? If you've got FTL travel, it's not going to take you a generation to get to your destination. Whereas if you're going many hundreds of light years at sublight speeds, then yes, it's going to take you a long time. So it's not entirely clear how all that works. And generation ships, well, see, yes and no. Generation ships are too far away for it not to be FTL. Well, not quite, because if you work it out, in the Elite lore, in the Elite manual, and I can show you that, we've got a subject on the in generation ship. We'll delve into this a little bit, right? But some of those generation ships have been travelling for 1,000 years. So if you can only manage 1 light year a year, okay, so if you get close to the speed of light year, a generation ship should be, after 1,200 years, can be up to 1,200 light years away, right? And that's where some of them are. If they are beyond that, then they've obviously gone faster than the speed of light, which potentially seems impossible. So I don't know, maybe somebody can investigate what is the farthest a generation ship has been found from Sol. Does anybody know, right? Does anybody know what the furthest away generation ship is in Elite Dangerous? So they could get near to light speed. I agree. So if you accelerate constantly, and then when you get to near light speed, you flip yourself over and then flip back again, then maybe there's some things. But the generation ship shouldn't be that far away. Now the Zurara is not a generation ship. Okay, it might look like one, might have the same model, but it's not a generation ship. Okay, it's a mega vessel, and the Zurara definitely did have hyperspace tech. So that was not a classic generation ship that we're talking about in this context. We only filed the failed generation ship. And I suppose the idea is that some of them were successful, right, and did colonize various planets, and then the ship maybe is cannibalized, right. Now, there is a mystery. Somebody mentioned it in the chat earlier about what happened to the moons of Mars. Okay, and also actually what happened to Ceres? Because if we look in here, Ceres does not exist. And neither do the moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos. Okay, now they're only tiny little asteroid things, but they don't exist in the universe of Elite Dangerous. Now I had to look through the lore, and I found nothing that suggests that they were destroyed or used or something, right? So maybe they were mined and used as material, right? But it doesn't say. Doom Guy blew them up. Maybe they were used as part of terraforming Mars. You know, could be, right? But it's not mentioned anywhere that I found, so I don't know what the answer there is, right? So that's a bit weird. They've just been now, and Ceres is quite a big. Yeah, so Phobos and Doom. Was it Phobos in Doom? Is that where the Doom Gate was? Where the monsters came out? Was it Phobos? Deimos? I can't remember now. But Ceres is a big. It's the biggest asteroid, right? The biggest dwarf planet in the asteroid belt. So that's that is a bit conspicuous by its absence, right? That's a big thing to have used up. And a big thing to have moved out of an orbit, right? So, oh yes, okay. So I vaguely remember playing Doom back in the 90s. So there's a beautiful shot of Saturn as we go past. Still, probably the nicest planet in our solar system from that perspective. Very pretty. Then we're heading for Titan Ceti, which is above the planet Titan, of course. So we haven't got. But oddly enough, lots of other planets have been modelled, right? So lots of other dwarf planets. This strikes me as odd because look at all the dwarf planets that have been modelled, all the way up to Persephone there, and Sedna and Eris, Pluto and Charon, right? They've all been done. But Ceres is bigger than all of those, and it isn't there. I know David Braben is a bit of a stickler for astronomical accuracy, so that's a surprising omission. We're doing a little bit of delve into history, so we're going to fire up the previous game to Elite Dangerous. Okay, the previous game to Elite Dangerous. Here we go. And you see how old this is because this was given as shareware to people. It's not quite 10 print Hello World. We're not in basic. This is DOS. This is 1990. This is from 1995. We're going to start the game. So this is what Elite Dangerous looked like, if you like, back then. Oh, very cool. So a little bit. This is the first time we're going to have a look at a little bit of history because I'm just curious to do a little bit of research here. So this is amazing sound effects, right? And I'm not. Commander Sinclair is trying to entice me into some old DOS commands. No, I'm not typing Deltree star. Anyway, so this is the previous Elite game, right? Called First Encounters. This is set in the year 3250, and I'm curious here because we start. Oh, I need to cut this ghastly music off. Right. Music off. There we go. Thank God for that. Right. Now you may be thinking, what's this? What's this? So this is set on a planet called Hope, and we'll get to a bit more of the detail. But notice the date. Okay, we're 1st of January 3250 right now. So this is 50 years before the start of Elite Dangerous. All I want to look at here is the galaxy map. Okay, that existed in 1995. I'm curious to see if we can determine whether or not Ceres existed according to the law. Okay, so I need to go and find the Earth. So there's Sol there, and I'm going to look up the system map for Sol. There we go. So interestingly enough, it does. This is the system map from First Encounters in the year 3250, and Ceres does exist. Okay, Ceres does exist. So according to the actual lore of the game. I didn't know this before. This is a completely random thing that I've just looked up, right? So according to the lore of the game, Ceres existed in 3250, which is the date we're at in this game. It's a small barren sphere of rock, nobody lives there, but it's in the system, right? And there are still Mars moons as well. Look, so that, I guess, asteroidal body Phobos and asteroidal body Deimos. So that sort of implies that they weren't used for terraforming. They did exist 50 years ago in the timeline of Elite Dangerous, but spookily they don't exist now. So what happened? So we need to ask Frontier what happened? What happened to Phobos, Deimos, and Ceres? We demand answers, right? Is it possible it's there but not mapped? I don't know. I mean, can somebody tell me? So I'll quit out of that. So anyway, that was a little taster of bring back Ceres. Yeah, exactly. They don't exist, right? They don't exist in they don't exist in Elite Dangerous. What's happened to Phobos, Deimos, and Ceres? We demand to know. So that's weird, isn't it? Okay, they're not there. Is that just a technical reason, maybe? So something spooky's happened. Something spooky's happened, right? Phobos, Deimos have disappeared, and so has Ceres. Now, Ceres, Phobos, and Deimos, I can sort of understand, right? But Ceres is a big thing. These are the moons you're looking for. No, we've lost 3 moons. I'm gonna write a strongly worded letter. That's what we do in the UK when we're upset about something. Okay, so we're gonna write a strongly worded letter to Frontier, asking where the hell they went. I need answers. They're not in the law. Okay, so that's a curious omission. Now I think it's an odd omission, right? Because David Braben is very hot on his astronomy, right? He loves astronomy. He's an astronomy kind of buff, right? Yeah, if you watch his Twitter feed, he's always talking about astronomical stuff. So for him to not have Phobos, Deimos, and Ceres in the solar system strikes me as a very, very peculiar omission, right? Maybe there's a technical reason, but I can't really. I mean, we can, all you have to do for Phobos and Deimos is put a barren rock there, right? So odd, right? Slightly odd. Whether it's kind of Raxler odd, I think that might be a bit stretched too far, but it's definitely peculiar, right? So there we go. Maybe they're too small, but Ceres isn't too small. You can make that explanation maybe for Phobos and Deimos, but Ceres is way smaller, way bigger rather than Charon, way bigger than most of these discoveries out here. Okay. None of which are arguably as significant as Ceres. Ceres is big enough that you can almost see it from Earth without a telescope. Okay, not quite, but it's a biggish place, right? It's not an insignificant little rock. Ceres is massive. So that's a weird one. Why can't we land on the moon in Elite Dangerous? That's a good question as well, right? Maybe it's like a tourist zone and you're not allowed to, it's a site of special protected interest. No, we're not allowed to land on the moon for reasons, right? So the moon is a special case there as well. So that's odd. I think a lot of the asteroid belt and soil was dumped on in Mars during terraforming attempts to add heat and water. Well, no, we've just proved, Bitstorm, that Phobos and Deimos can't be because they exist in-game in 3250. We've just proved that. We've just literally fired up the previous Elite game to check. And Ceres, Phobos and Deimos do exist in the previous Elite First Encounters, which is set 50 years before Elite Dangerous. So we know they exist. So something happened in the last 50 years in the Elite lore to remove Phobos, Deimos, and Ceres, which is just weird, right? So maybe it's a retcon, but it's a curious one, right? Very, very curious. So he dropped most of the Jovian moons, so he thought they were too small or weird. But Ceres is a strange one, so maybe there's something peculiar. Wouldn't that be ironic if the clue to missing things was actually in Earth's asteroid belt after all this time? So yeah, there's supposed to be colonies on the moon, and they probably haven't built the artifacts. So there's probably a techie reason why you can't land on the moon, I would imagine, at this point in time, right? So that's probably the case. And the trailer did use JFK's speech. You're quite right. I used it actually because I thought it was a good place to start the tour, right? It's weird why that isn't the case. So I think that's a bit strange. But yeah, there we go. Historical site protected. But yeah, Ceres is an odd omission. So we have let's go back and And yeah, Triton is permit locked as well. So there's some oddities in the Sol system when you look around. So do go and visit the tourist beacons in these various systems, because you'll find out a little bit more about the background as well. Some good sights to see in those systems too. Now, you know, all sorts of things going on there. So let's just summarise. Okay, so we started off with Tau Ceti. We colonise worlds around the Sol system. That sort of gets a bit out of hand. Earth makes an ultimatum to Tau Ceti. We go to war with Tau Ceti. That ends in a stalemate. The politicians get together and we have a political kind of treaty which forms the basis of the Federation. More and more colony ships are sent out. We start colonizing further and further places, and the Federation becomes, you know, humanity's kind of first interstellar construct in space. We get Mars under control, we begin to get the Earth under control, and we have a period of relative peace. So this, you know, things are slightly better you know, in the 23rd century than they were, you know, in the fractious 22nd century. We're getting a little bit more stable. It's things are looking up. Okay, but some people are finding the Federation a bit too controlling. I want to get away from it. Okay, and they kind of go off into space, looking at different star systems further away from the Federation influence, and thereby hangs the tail of the next episode. So next
Make way
week,
for oncoming traffic. Restrict your
next week
speed.
we shall be going to the Achenar system, and there was a question early on as to why Achenar doesn't have an R in it, as it does in the real life actually. So you'll notice in Elite Dangerous, if we go to Achenar, it's spelt with a single R at the end, obviously, in the world of Elite Dangerous. Okay, now everywhere else that I've been able to identify. So if I look it up on Wikipedia as an obvious one, it's called. I don't need to look up Wikipedia. Achenar Wikipedia. There we go. It redirects, unsurprisingly, to Achenar with a slightly harder. Let me just close the browser down because you won't be able to see the chat very well from that. And it's either Achenar or Achenar. It's difficult to say how you pronounce these things. I'm not kind of sure, but it's spelt with an extra R. Okay. So for some strange reason, it's in Elite Dangerous they dropped the R, right? Maybe it was too hard to say or pronounce or something. I don't know. But everywhere else, and Achenar here actually is something completely different. So for some strange reason, you can't blame the you can't blame the Americans for that. They drop U's, but they don't drop R's normally. No, I have no explanation for this, but I did ask, right? Because I'm an astronomer, right? So back in the days when Elite Dangerous was just a Kickstarter and we were working on the initial round of books, I said to, and they said, well, the Empire is around the star Achenar. And I thought, well, that's great. How do you, and why you keep spelling Achenar wrong? And then there was actually on the writers' forum, there was a question, right? Where's the Empire based? It's based around Achenar. Okay, well that's all good. That's the same as the previous game. Are we going to spell it Achenar with an R or Achenar without an R? And Michael Brooks came on the forum and said it's Achenar without the extra R. And I basically said why? Because it's wrong. And Michael Brooks came back with the definitive answer from FDev on the reason for this, and the definitive answer was because that's the way it's going to be. So Michael Brooks laid down the law. Okay, that was it. So it's Achenar without the R because Michael Brooks said so, right? And he was very good natured, but the way Michael Brooks was, he just said this is how it is, and that's how it was, right? So I didn't actually. I should have checked. What is it? I'm assuming it's like that in the previous game. Let me just. I'm sorry. I'm going to, out of curiosity, I'm just going to check that, which means I've got to fire up this silly thing again. So apologies for that. Let me just go back. Let's go back to the DOS box quickly. I just want to check what it is. I'm assuming in the previous game it is also Achenar without the R, right? Where is the Empire? Down south, this way. There. Yeah, so see, in the previous game, it was spelled without the R as well. There we go. So there's proof, right? Achenar or Achenar. So I'm assuming it was probably. I quite like the old school way of typing it all in there. It makes me feel cool. It feels like I know what I'm doing. So yeah, so I reckon actually we can double check this by going to the previous game. So this is Elite 3 effectively, okay? First Encounters is the third Elite game. If we go back to the second Elite game, which we can also do, I've got that on here as well. Frontier 1, and it's Frontier. No, just Frontier. There we go. So this is the second Elite game, and I need to tell it that I've got a sound blaster, otherwise it doesn't work. And here, look, we can start in all sorts of. We can actually start in Mars. Let's go to Mars in that game, right? This is what Mars looks like. Look from the surface. Okay, so look how cool the second Elite game is. We've got planetary landings. So, and again, let's go through this amazing user interface. Okay, so this is the core systems, and we'll go down, and I bet you that here. Where is it? Imperial Systems. There we are. Look, so there's Achenar. So it looks right. It looks like it's a typo in the second game, which has been taken through, and they've done it for continuity reason. So I reckon that's the reason, right? It's a continuity error that David Braben's kept for reasons, right? I don't know. Yeah, oddly enough, this second game actually, in some ways, the GUI was far easier to use than the second one. But we haven't. Well, while we're here in the second game, let's just check the solar system here. It should still exist, right? Because we've already established it in 32. Where's Earth? There it is. In 3250, Ceres, etc., is still there. Well, no, see, the DOS allowed 8 characters, Achenar is only 7. Yeah, that would make sense, but it doesn't, because you've got, look, there's Fomalhaut, that's got 9. So that's not, you know, the 8 character thing in DOS was a file name limit, not a string limit. So you can see there, Fomalhaut, you know, breaks that one. So it's not an 8 character thing in the game itself. The limitations on DOS are just from the file name perspective. 8 characters dot 3 characters. That's a file name thing, not an in-game string. So Fomalhaut shows you that you can have longer. So it's not that, right? They could have put Achenar with an extra R in it. But here again we can see it looks exactly the same. There's Ceres. Okay, it existed in 3200. It existed in 3250, but by 3300 Elite Dangerous, it's mysteriously disappeared. So what's you know, we need to ask. I think we should all go on the Frontier forums and Reddit and Twitter and then demand from Frontier an explanation of what happened to Ceres. In fact, I'm going to do that after this. I'm going to put a tweet out to them. Where the hell did Ceres go? So and there's more for us to do in these old games. Okay, we'll take a further look at them because they are important to the lore. They'll come into their own as we get into the later stages of Elite Dangerous lore. Okay, we will have a look at that. Have we been searching for the? I don't know. I want the truth. So blame. No. So Ian Bell had nothing to do with these versions of Elite, right? So he's not involved at this stage. So we'll come to that. We'll come to the whole Elite Braben and Bell thing. There's something going on, right? There's something going on. Missing R's. We need to find out what's causing them. So there we go. Weird and wonderful stuff, right? How do we get out of this game? I thought I was exit. It's just taking me back to the thing. Never mind. Right. So, my friends, we come to the end of another Elite Dangerous lore tour. Just get back there so we can see all your lovely ships. So, yeah, it's a bit weird. So blame Michael Brooks, okay, for the continuing continuity error. But thank you ever so much for joining me again for this episode 2 of the Law Tour. So I hope you found this interesting, how the Federation has expanded out to a certain degree. We're now 20, 30 light years away from Sol in all directions, right? So the Federation is expanding, but not everybody's happy with this new federal overview of the universe. And next week we discover how some plucky colonists decided to stand up against the Federation and form a totally new dynasty of operations, which ultimately becomes the Empire. So that's going to be a cool thing. I'm quite looking forward to next week, okay, because it's the Empire. I like the Empire. It's probably because I'm British, right? But I think the Empire is cool, and we get we start to hear about the Empire in terms of its style and its things. And there's a beautiful clipper sitting right in front of me there. Sort of basking away on the screen. So meet me next week in the Akanar system, and we will discuss the glorious history of the Empire and how it came to be. So I hope you'll join me for that one. Have yourself a fantastic bank holiday weekend. If you want to join me for a further stream, I will actually be streaming on Saturday as well. So what I will be doing on Saturday is I'll be joining the virtual elite community meet. So there's a whole bunch of streamers and a whole bunch of silliness going on, right? On Saturday throughout the day. So it starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, goes right on till late basically, and it's going to be online shenanigans and all sorts of cool stuff, right? I'm going to be doing a stream at 1 o'clock UK time. And you'll be able to watch it afterwards, obviously. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an Iron Man mode in Elite, okay? But I'm not going to do it in this version of Elite, okay? I'm going to take you on an 8-bit memory. What I was planning to do at the real ECM was bring my classic ZX Spectrum computer along and show everybody what the original Elite looked like, okay? So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to fire up Elite in a browser, probably. I'll see if I can get my actual Spectrum to work and find a way of filming it on screen, but that's proving problematic so far. But what I'm going to do is show you this, okay? So let me just get this up and running. Full screen that, and actually I want that over here. So rather than the Elite that you know and love, I'm going to be playing this, okay? I'm going to be playing this. Now I'm going to try and do an Iron Man run through of Elite, okay, on the ZX Spectrum, which is the computer I had as a kid. So this is going to be a proper trip down memory lane for me, okay? So I'm going to try and play Elite for an hour or so on Saturday from 1 PM and see how far I can get, okay, from a standing start. Now in the original Elite you've got a Cobra Mark III with 3 missiles on board, a pulse laser, and that was it, okay, and 100 credits. So that's your starting position. So I'm going to go from there. So tune in on Saturday to see me struggle to get off from a standing start on the ZX Spectrum of Elite. A bit of a nostalgia treat for those of you who haven't seen the original game in any length. This is what Elite Dangerous starts from. This original game. Obviously originally came on the BBC microcomputer. I'm going to play it on the Spectrum because it's the one I had as a kid, right? So I didn't have a BBC. So I'm going to do my best to take you on a tour of Elite from a standing start and see how far I get, okay? And there you go. See, there's the Cobra Mark III spinning away merrily on the screen. It's the same ship as I'm still flying today. So hopefully you'll join me for that on Saturday as well. Otherwise, you can always catch it on a replay. So if you want to do that, then do tune in on Saturday. Part of a virtual ECM. Do tune on. Yeah, lots of other people are streaming. There is a thread on Reddit. There's a thread on the Frontier forums about the virtual community meet. Some very, very cool people on there who will be streaming and doing weird and wacky stuff throughout the day. Frontier are involved in all sorts of other cool stuff. So do join in on that. It should be a good day of Elite stuff. It would have been in Cambridge. We can't meet in real life because of the virus, so we're doing it online instead. So that would be cool fun. So that's to look forward to, okay? So join me on Saturday for a bit of weird and wacky Elite Dangerous shenanigans. But for now, thank you very much for your company. Really appreciated it this evening. Hope you enjoyed the Law Tour episode 2. and we'll be back next Thursday for Law Talk episode 3, where we discuss the mightiness and the wonder and the vastness of the Empire. So I really can't wait, because that's going to be really kind of cool. Thank you very much. You guys, right on, Commanders, take care. 07, and I will see you next week. So let's go out on a I don't know, a cruise to goodness knows where, and then we'll finish up the game from there. Lovely to have your company, my friends. Look after yourselves. Stay safe, right? Stay safe. Crazy times out there, obviously, in the real world. Look after yourselves, and we'll see you next week. Be good, and take it easy. Oh, come on, Maslock. There we go. I'm going to charge away. and do tweet me your pictures, okay? If you've been taking snapshots of the tour, do tweet them on Twitter at me and Facebook and stuff, and just sort of generally spread the word. It's good to have more and more people turning up and hopefully enjoying a bit of the background lore to the game. Because there's quite a lot there, right? It's quite interesting. So all good stuff. Take care, my friends. I will see you soon. Bye bye now.
So there we have it, part 2 of the Law Tour done and dusted, and wasn't a lot of flying around in that. It was it was quite go here, go there, come back here, go back there, and not as much flying around. Considering we covered more systems, there was probably less travelling than there was last week in Sol. But nevertheless, still all very interesting stuff. So, looking forward already to next week. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, subscribe, leave any comments underneath. Subscribe, hit the logo in the top left, and to see the other videos in the Elite Gamers playlist, hit the logo in the top right. Catch you later, folks. Taddy bye.